Good morning, y'all. It's wonderful to see so many young people and old friends. I'm Shirley Strauss, and this is my husband, Sam Strauss Jr.
Good morning. Ordinarily, Shirley does most of the talking, but today I'm shooting for downright chatting.
Now, I was once a teacher in this temple's religious school, and I believe we may have a memorable lesson for you 2 days before Yom Kippur. Yes, we call it the Day of Atonement, but that word, Kippur, is from a root that means missing the mark.
I was an avid duck hunter, so I'm tracking this so far. But you're talking about doing something or saying something to someone that just isn't right?
Yes. Now see if this sounds familiar.
Okay.
Suppose you ask a girl out for a first date, and instead of showing up, you go to a football game out of town.
Oh, that is familiar. That was me. Shirley and I met in New Orleans when she was at Sophie Newcomb College studying early childhood education, and I was studying business at Tulane.
Is it safe to say you missed the mark?
Most definitely.
Did you apologize?
I did, and fortunately you forgave me. We later had our first date. Ironically, I was replacing another guy who couldn't make it to something you'd planned, and the rest is history.
What do you think? Without Sam's sincere apology, would we have even been friends? Or gotten married in 1953? Or best of all, become parents to Steve, Tripp, and Susan, our distinctly individual kids?
The moral of our story is that making things right with someone can be the first step of an amazing journey. And the rest of the story is about how we work together to help make things right in the world.
Though Sam and I did not share a love for Razorback football, thankfully Tripp does, we were very much of one heart, but different skill sets when it came to what we could do for others.
I grew up here in Little Rock, part of the Pfeiffer family, and one of the oldest Jewish families in the town. We were founding members of the temple and boast a long line of temple presidents. My parents, Eleanor Pfeiffer and Sam Strauss Jr., brought up my sister Ruby and me at 420 Midland Avenue, a house that was designed and built for both our grandparents, Ruby and Leo Pfeiffer, and us. There were 2 master bedrooms.
The family business was Pfeiffer Brothers Department Store. Now, the large, beautiful building at 6th and Main. Sam's grandfather took the streetcar home for lunch, and sometimes Sam would go back to the store with him, planning the roots of Sam's 30-year retail career.
After 11 years with Pfeiffer's, my father, originally from Indiana, and thus a foreigner, was president from 1935 until 1963, when the family sold Pfeiffer's to name the largest department store in Little Rock. Yep, Dillard's. I had been a vice president at Pfeiffer's then, worked for Dillard's, managing the Park Plaza store, before going to work for my best friend, Dave Grunfest Jr., at Sterling Store's Magic Mart in 1968.
Now that we have the business picture, let's turn our focus to Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. Now, Sam's dad wasn't just president of the store. He helped launch the Arkansas Arts Center and was chairman of the Air Base Community Council, president of the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce, chairman of Little Rock's Federal Reserve, president of the Little Rock Boys Club, on the board of the Leo and Levi Hospital in Hot Springs, the generous Ottenheimer Foundation, and much more.
I was impressed by this wide array of activities, and I followed his lead. We each served our country for 2 years after college. One thing I did differently, I chose not to become a president of any organization. Never cared for the titles. And it freed me to quietly spread my wealth, literally and figuratively. Like him, I was a bank director on the Ottenheimer Foundation board. Other important projects included the Lighthouse for the Blind for 30 years, mostly with the finance committee. Our temple's rabbi, Ira Sanders, helped start that organization. Helen Keller came to the dedication in 1945. And if you just said, "Who is that?" please watch the movie, The Miracle Worker. And the Centers for Youth and Families, the Little Rock Rotary Club. In the late 80s, the Strausses, my sister, and the Thalheimer family contributed to a gallery built and named for my father at the Arkansas Arts Center.
In 1992, our 3 kids snuck into town to throw us a surprise 40th anniversary party in that gallery.
We were awestruck that they had arranged everything together from different parts of the country. I gave my spies a hard time for not tipping us off. When the gate went up, revealing a room full of people, Shirley was initially upset because she wondered who was having a party that she was not invited to.
Okay, that's funny. Now, we'll circle back to Sam because there's more, but it's time we met my Waco family. Now, where Sam's dad was practical, my daddy, Izzy Fred, a well-known Waco jeweler, was more philosophical and wired just right. He taught my brother Herb and me that it isn't the color of your skin, the size of your pocketbook, the depth of your knowledge, or the religion of your choice that matters. It's what you do with what you have that counts.
Such wise words. And your mother?
Oh. Daddy painted broad strokes. Mom gave us the tools to implement them, stressing education, discipline, integrity, high standards, which we passed on to our kids. Mom introduced me to the arts at a young age. I played piano, sang, tap danced.
There's a picture of an 8-year-old tap dancing Shirley, looking just like that other famous Shirley.
Oh, and how driven were we? Herb was his class valedictorian, and I was mine at 16. Herb, who trained thousands of doctors in Waco and Houston, would tell them that they'd be going through him if they entertained hopes of getting into Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Duke, or Stanford. Oh, P.S. Our two boys, Steve and Tripp, attended Ivy League colleges. Steve at Dartmouth and Tripp at Yale, where he swam and played water polo. Both studied business and have MBAs. Steve's is from Columbia and Tripp's from Stanford. My brother and I weren't particularly close, but I could have given a similar speech.
Shirley chased down the mailman before he came to the house the day the SAT scores came out. And Susan followed in both our footsteps, first at your school, Sophie Newcomb, and then at mine, Tulane, where Susan earned an MSW, Master's in Social Work.
I was incredibly proud of Susan that day. Sam, we haven't talked about Temple or UAMS.
I was on the Temple board a number of times, and people thought I'd become president.
Hard to imagine you sitting on the bema every week for 2 years during duck season.
We always supported the Temple, and I loved going to the classical reform services with you and Ruby. We were on the Jewish Federation board too, and we were honored with Jane Mendel Tikkun Olam Award in 2011.
You often set your sights on the big picture while I did the groundwork. At UAMS, for example, you served on the board, doing fundraising and financing, and now Tripp and his wife Lenka do, while I volunteered every Friday in the Dixon patient waiting room of the Winthrop Rockefeller Cancer Institute. I'd had 3 different cancers, and I truly understand what the patients were going through.
You probably lived an extra 5 to 10 years thanks to UAMS's superb care. We were equally grateful for Steve's treatment when he had Hodgkin's disease in 1990. Personal connections make the work especially meaningful. We gave over $500,000 to UAMS over the years. Our kids give generously too. And now, for something uniquely female, the Panel for American Women.
Definitely. The panel started in 1957, right after the Central High crisis, to ease tensions during desegregation.
Now, each panel featured a Jew, a Catholic, an American woman of Chinese ancestry, and a WASP, aka a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, or what we call today a Christian.
Or something else. We traveled across Arkansas, speaking to groups about our different racial and religious viewpoints, giving the audiences a safe space to ask whatever questions they had.
Was that why you later taught comparative religion at Sunday school?
Definitely. Oh, I learned so much from the other women on the panel that influenced my teaching. Most important, listening. I used that skill when I was in the Volunteers in Public Schools program. And in related news, Sam and I were founding members of the Little Rock Racquet Club in 1967.
Related because 2 other racquet clubs in town wouldn't accept blacks or Jews as members.
So, a group, including the Rileys, Bonds, Godwins, and others, made it happen.
For the racquet club's grand opening, we brought in Arthur Ashe, the world's most famous black American professional tennis player, to play an exhibition match against his Davis Cup teammate, Cliff Ritchie.
The Racket Club was home to many swim practices for both boys for years. Trip still swims there every day. Sam, let's do some word association. Bull Sprig Duck Club.
My happy place. Counted down the calendar until duck season began. I loved having guests in my home away from home. A 3-bedroom double wide.
Sam's hospitality was legendary. Always let his guests shoot first, and even let them shoot beyond their allotment.
It wasn't all about the hunting sometimes. I was just there for beauty's nature. We founders of Bull Sprig were environmentalists before it was fashionable. Our ownership agreement prohibited permanent residences on the property, so no trees were cleared to support our duck habit.
I never thought of myself as a duck widow. Shouldn't we encourage the activities that make our loved ones happy? Like your antique woodworking tools, Sam.
I collected and cataloged wooden planing tools used by farmers and mechanics more than a century ago. We traveled to auctions in New England and Midwest. I called these trips vacations, so you'd join me with the kids at Camps Walden and Kennebec in Maine.
Now, yeah, I knew. You were the rare collector who focused on American-made tools, featuring improvements over their European predecessors. In 2006, he donated nearly his entire collection to Arkansas State University.
My turn. Steinmart.
Worked there every Thursday for years. I brought my own tiny TV with me so I could watch As the World Turns in the break room while eating an apple and drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper.
Now, something special, shopping service. Shirley has always had an incredible sense of style and loved having everything just so.
I was a personal shopper for women, and I'd also help men find gifts for them. I won't name names, but one of my customers would become a U.S. Senator, Secretary of State, and the first female presidential candidate.
Favorite trip?
Our honeymoon. It was a month-long European trip. We boarded the Holland America in New Amsterdam in New York Harbor. Yes, we cruised from New York to England and back. Yours?
Driving to Alaska. Our last trip. I'd prearranged to sell our Honda van there.
It was a long drive, but there was an Alaskan cruise at the end of the road, and Steve even flew up to join us.
Speaking of Steve, he has had an excellent career working in high-level Department of Transportation positions in D.C. and New York. He appreciates history like I do. He's on the board of the Museum of Southern Jewish Experience in New Orleans and loves having your index card recipes, especially the cranberry jello mode.
Tripp retired from his career as a financial consultant. He'd previously worked for Goldman Sachs in Tokyo and London. He and Lenka are happy to have our granddaughter Steele back here in Little Rock, and Tripp was gratified to enjoy one last Razorback football victory over LSU at War Memorial with you. Even though you couldn't walk or speak due to the late stages of supranuclear palsy, the degenerative disease that had eventually ended your life.
Susan was a social worker, then had the successful River Market Art Space Gallery before turning to jewelry full-time. We loved our weekly lunches, and she carries on my legacy with the Lighthouse for the Blind. She especially treasures her collection with Helen Miller, her 98-year-old bookkeeper who worked for me, my father, and the temple. Susan thinks of you, Shirley, at the end of every jewelry show because you always wanted to know her bottom line.
Speaking of which, we want to send our love to our nearest and dearest friends. Those who are here with us, we'll see you at tea. And those who aren't, you know who you are, and now you know who we are. And I hope you'll remember us when you pass UAMS or the Arkansas Arts Center. It's a good thing Sam apologized, right? Thank you for listening. Say goodbye, Sam.
Goodbye, Sam. And thank you, Shirley, for being such a good teacher.